4 months after Jason was diagnosed with Marfan syndrome, we had a lot of meetings with genetic counselors as to what routes we could take if we decided that we did not want to have a baby with Marfan's, or what routes we could take if we wanted to have a baby with Marfan's, and how early in the pregnancy we could test to find out if they had Marfan's, which you ladies know all about in my previous video entitled My Marfan Man. So that December of 2010, so December 5th, 2010, I was having a physical with my doctor that morning, and I just happened to say to her that I had just noticed the past couple of months my cycles weren't 28 days, and they were more 29, 30, and at that point I was just like, okay, I have to really talk to my doctor about that, because I had a great schedule with my cycle. So the minute I was just like, hey, this is a bit wonky, I wanted to let her know. And she's a very great doctor, and we have a great relationship. And she was just like, you know what, Kiara, let's get you in for a transvaginal ultrasound, and it doesn't hurt to see if there's an issue or something. But she's like, all of your pap smears have come back normal, so she's like, I don't think there's a problem. And I was just like, oh, laughing. I'm like, oh, it's because I'm turning 30 next year, right? Because I just thought, I was 29 at the time when I saw her in that December of 2010. I was just like, okay, I'm hitting my 30s and I'm getting old, so maybe my, cycles are changing and stuff. So I went to work. So I met up with my doctor, had my physical, everything was fine, and then I went to work, and I was also complaining to her that morning that I had a little bit of abdominal cramping. She's like, okay. She's like, well, is your period coming? And I didn't think my period was due until maybe, 7 days later or so. So for me, it was just like, okay, that's really odd. Like, why am I getting cramping and stuff? Because I didn't experience I only experienced mild pains during my menstruation. So I went to work, and then all of a sudden, I'm at work, and I'm typing away, and it's probably about an hour or two later from seeing my doctor, who had also performed a physical on me that morning. I was succumbed by this horrible, horrible abdominal cramping. So I was just like, oh my God, I'm like, what the hell's going on? I'm like typing, and I'm like hunched over my computer because the pain was so unbearable. So I somehow ended up asking one of my colleagues for, an Advil. I took it. It wasn't working. So went throughout the day, and then around 4 p.m. I was like, okay, this is not going away. The cramps are getting worse. I think I need to go home. Like, it was to the point where I needed to go home, and I was just like, I have never experienced anything like that. So the cramps were so bad, ladies, that I ended up taking a cab home. And I live in a city, I work in the city in Toronto, as you can tell, Toronto. So I was like, I hated the fact that I had to take a cab because the subway was just literally down like 2 blocks from where I work. So I was so much in pain that I was just like, I can't even make it 2 blocks to the subway, and let alone get off the subway and then walk home. Could not do that. So I called a cab. The cab picked me up, and I just remember being in the cab ride home, and anytime he would go over a bump, I just wanted to cry. It was just like the tears were just starting to bubble up and burst and kind of trickle down. So I was just like, oh my God, just please be careful. Like, don't go over any bumps. I didn't say that to him, but I was just like, okay, breathing and stuff like that. So I ended up getting home, and took the elevator up to my condo and literally dropped my bags and crawled to my bedroom, where I stayed there, had my phone nearby for when Jason would call, because I was updating him from work. He knew that I had to go home, so he was really concerned about me. And I was just like, oh my goodness, hun, like, I'm in unbearable pain right now. I had a heating pad on me, that didn't work. I took more. At this point, I took a Midol, that didn't work. Nothing was working, ladies. So Jason comes home. I think he made me a soup because I didn't have much of an appetite. And I went to bed really early. And because I was just like, the pain's so bad. So we're in bed. I think it's around 2 o'clock in the morning, and the cramps are still there, but this time, ladies, it is full, strong, like it is in full force. So I woke up, and I'm just, at this point, I'm like, the pain that I'm feeling, or the sensation of pain was all in my anal region, and it felt like someone was taking a knife up my bum hole and just taking that knife and going back and forth with it. It was unbearable. I had low back pain at this point. Also, the abdominal cramping at the front. It was just like, I was just like, and I even said to Jason, I said, if this is what labor feels like, then I'm experiencing it. So Jason took one look at me, and I was really pale, and he said, you know what, hun? I think we need to get you to the hospital. And at that point, he said to me, he's like, in all my 8 years, because we were 8 years together at that point, in all my 8 years of seeing you, like during or around your periods, you have never, ever had these types of pains. So I said, you know what, you're right. And Jason ended up taking me to the hospital. And I basically had to crawl my way out of the condo. Jason had to hold me up because of how unbearable the pain was. We get to the hospital, we hit up emergency, and, I finally get in, and the doctor was asking me all these type of questions. Was I pregnant? No. Did I suffer from any STDs? No. Have I ever had my appendix out? No. So all those type of questions. And at that point, the pain was not going away, and they did not administer any pills on me yet. So after questions, they did they did a pap smear on me. Yeah. They did a pap smear on me, ladies, when I was in all that pain, and it was brutal. It was, the pain that I felt was unbelievable when they performed that pap smear. So when they performed the pap smear and the test results came back, they noticed that my white blood cell count was very high. So they were like, okay, well, you've got an infection of some sort. And they were like, since you're experiencing a lot of abdominal cramping, we think that it may be tied to your appendix, and that, you may need to take your appendix out. So I was like, okay. If you guys think it's my appendix, that's great. Let's get me in. Let's get whatever is causing the pain out of me. And they said, yeah, well, before we can do surgery, we need to do a CAT scan on you to just make sure that it is your appendix and not anything else. So now I'm sure you guys can see where this is going. So I'm on the stretcher, I get the CAT scan performed, and now at this point, it's like, I think, 7 a.m. because we got to the hospital at 3 a.m. By the time they checked you in and they asked you questions and they performed tests and they finally got the CAT scan done, it was 7 a.m. And I remember Jason was calling my mom to be like, hey, your daughter's in the hospital. My mom got on a bus from Niagara Falls and came to meet us. So I remember at that point, around 7 or 8 a.m., I was wheeled in to have a CAT scan performed on me. So I do the CAT scan, and then they take me up back to the emergency kind of ward. And they were like, okay. They're like, well, we did the CAT scan, but we don't think it's your appendix. They said, so I was like, okay. And then they said, we just want to do a transvaginal ultrasound on you because it looks like there's something going on around the kind of reproductive kind of area there. So I was like, okay, whatever. Just let's get this done. Let's figure out, what's going on. And now at that point, they had given me a high dose of the drug that all the rappers drug about. Vicodin? I don't remember, but at this point I was still in pain, but I was flying high with the medication that they had given me. So they wheel me down to the ultrasound room where they would perform my first transvaginal ultrasound. And oh my goodness, ladies, when they performed the transvaginal ultrasound, and that was the first time that I actually, when that wand was in my vagina, the pain was so unbearable that I was you could just see the tears just starting to come down my face. And Jason was in the room with me, and he's just like, oh my goodness, like, what's going on? And I remember the technician said to me, she's like, oh, Kiara, it looks like you have some cyst on your ovaries. And the doctor that was there who was also in the room, was like, oh yeah, the cyst, they're very normal. A lot of women have cyst on their ovaries and stuff. And I was just like, okay, whatever, sure. And then she's like, but it's nothing to worry about, And I was just like, all right, sure, just, stop the pain. So at that point, I was told that I had some cyst on my ovaries, but it was normal. And maybe it was an infection of some sort going on. So then they wheeled me back into the emergency ward, and at this point my mom's there, and she's seeing me, and it was just a crazy day, night, evening. I'm out of it, and we had to wait about maybe an hour or two before the doctor could take a look at the CAT scan and the transvaginal ultrasound results to figure out what the hell was going on. And I remember when the doctor finally came into my room, had all my papers and stuff, he said to me, you've got some fairly large cysts on your ovaries. Have you ever heard of a disease called endometriosis? And at that point, I had never even heard the term endometriosis. I didn't even know what the hell it was. And I was like, no, I don't. I've never heard of it. And he's like, these reports are going to be sent to your doctors, but, we think you have endometriosis. So that is how I found out I had endometriosis.